This podcast series is part of the mission of the New York Intellectual Property Law Association, NYIPLA, Past Presidents Committee, to preserve a snippet of the history of our association through the eyes of our past presidents, and to provide continuity for our century-old association's values and traditions for future NYIPLA leaders. I'm Rob Rando, the current president of NYIPLA for the 2023-2024 term. Today, we are pleased to have with us Charles Hoffmann. He was the 91st president of the NYIPLA during the 2013-2014 term. Charlie, before we begin with the questions, is there anything that you want to tell us up front?
No, I think this is quite interesting. I think this project you're doing is very helpful, I think, to people who might be interested in the association. So I hope I can give something that's useful to people today.
Well, thank you, Charlie. So, Charlie, please tell us a little about who you are and where you are in your career today.
Okay, well, it's a long period of time. I started out really as an engineering graduate from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, and had a job for a short period of time, a year or two, at ITT Nesbitt as an engineer. And then in those years, you had the draft, so you had to enter military service. So I went in military service in the reserves. And while I was in, the Berlin Wall went up, and I was activated to active duty in case President Kennedy needed troops in Europe. And fortunately, we were not sent to Europe. And I had to spend my time in Massachusetts. But it didn't turn out too badly because they came around and said they saw I played college basketball and they can use me on the post team. So I ended up finishing my military service playing basketball. So that was not too bad. At that time, I considered what I wanted to do, and I decided to apply and enter law school. And I entered New York University Law School after I left service. I did not go back to work as an engineer. And when I was in the law school, people asked me, well, where did you go to school? When I said I went to engineering school, they said, oh, you're going to be a patent attorney. And I said, well, I didn't know much about being a patent attorney, but they decided that that's where I belonged. So I looked into that, and when I finished, I took interviews and was fortunate enough to get a position with Kane, Dalsimer and Kane, which at that time was one of the major firms in Manhattan and in the United States. And in that firm, we had several past presidents of the Patent Law Association and active presidents, and the firm was very active in the association. And I became quickly involved in that with the judge's dinner and clients at the judge's dinner and things we normally do with the association for getting involved with education and other portions of the profession. So that's a long time ago. And that was 1966 when I started with the association, a long time ago. And I was, yeah, go ahead. You want to hear?
Sure.
I'll bring you up to.
Keep going. Yeah, you got to bring us up to date.
Yeah, let me just bring you up to date so we get up to date.
That's right.
I was at Kane Dalsimer for 18 years, a partner there, and litigated many patent cases and prosecuted many patent cases. And after 18 years, the practice sort of changed. it was possible to practice patent law and not be in a major city, which was kind of a change. Most of the firms are in major cities. And I saw the opportunity to bring my practice closer to home. My commute each day was an hour and 40 minutes each way. So I decided to open a law firm on Long Island with three other attorneys, but the bulk of it was started by myself and Ron Barron. So the firm was Hoffmann and Barron, and Hoffmann and Barron grew to 40 attorneys, 100 employees on Long Island. It was a worthwhile effort for us to do that, and I continued handling many litigations and prosecutions and worldwide clients. And after 30 years at Hoffmann and Barron, I retired from the firm and felt retirement was not the right time for me yet. And that was 10 years ago. And so I started up a little practice again, Charles Hoffmann PC. And for the past 10 years, I have been practicing on a smaller scale, handling litigation and prosecution matters in the patent and trademark area. And fortunately, getting assistance from attorneys in the area that worked for me at one time or have their own practices, and we combine to handle cases. So at the age of 85, I have not yet fully retired.
That's great.
But hopefully I can keep doing a little bit for a while longer.
Absolutely. Well, getting back to your initial time with NYIPLA, you may have mentioned it already, but what inspired you to join the NYIPLA?
Well, as I said, the firm was very active that I started in practice with, and there were a number of past presidents and people on committees and offices, and we attended regularly the judges' dinner and other affairs, and I got involved in that right from the beginning, and enjoyed participating and working with and meeting attorneys from other firms, which was not a bad thing to have happen, and enhanced my view of the whole profession and gave me a chance to learn more about what was going on.
And do you recall around what point in your career that you joined the NYIPLA?
Well, it would have been the first year, 1966 or 67. It would have been right at the beginning.
Sure. Okay. And what kind of activities and roles did you engage in early on as a younger member?
Well, as a younger member, I was not as active. Certainly wasn't an officer or a major member of the firm, but I did participate in the regular activities, the educational activities when it applied, and also of course, the major events such as the annual judges' dinner at the Waldorf.
So did there come a time when you decided you wanted to assume a leadership role, or did it just evolve over time?
Well, it evolved over time, but I was encouraged by one of the advantages of the association, and it was that you got to know attorneys from other firms. And one former president from the Brumbaugh firm, which was another large firm in Manhattan, I had litigated against and with as representing licensee and patent holder. So we were on the same side and opposite sides, and we had a very good relationship. And he was a very active former member, and he encouraged me to participate on a more advanced level. And I did, and started on the path up the path to president in the various offices that you go through from year to year. But I was continuously active every year in the organization.
And I think, you've identified one of the great benefits of NYIPLA, and that's the camaraderie and congeniality that we experience among our membership with our practitioners. So, Charlie, let's talk about your time as president. What was your trajectory through the association leading to becoming president?
Well, I followed the path of most presidents up from the various offices, secretary and vice president, and all the way up from year to year until I assumed the presidency and carried out the various duties of each office as I progressed up.
And before we get into some specifics about your presidency, can you give us a general overview of what the intellectual property or patent landscape was like in terms of issues confronting the patent community or IP community during the time that you were president?
Well, at the time I was president, there was some shifting in the patent field in regard to the scope of coverage and the ability to enforce patents. Doctrine of equivalence was under a doctrine to help the patent holder was under attack, and went through a series of revisions under the law, through a series of cases. And I was involved in that very, very intimately. We can discuss it a little further on. So there was a transition in the profession, I think, as to the strength of patents and the relative ability to maintain them, enforce them in the U.S.
Sure, that was around the time of the enactment of the AIA.
Yes.
So can you provide a general overview of the various tasks and responsibilities that you engaged during your term as president?
Well, it was a series of monthly meetings and committees and subcommittees, and setting up various types of events. And in particular, when I was in there, I focused on expanding the location of some of our CLE events and meetings out of the Manhattan area into more remote areas. We held a period of classes or meetings up at the Rensselaer, my alma mater. We did that at the university site, and we did some others that were again remote from Manhattan to try and spread out the availability of the educational part of the association to encourage more participation. I think that was consistent a little bit with a lot of the centralization of the patent firms into the suburbs, decentralization, and spreading out to different smaller areas. And so we were trying to get more access to those people and have them participate in the programs, the educational programs.
Sure, and we are the New York Intellectual Property Law Association, right? So
Right.
we're a large state. We have 4 United States districts within the state. So, all right. So, did you have any specific goals or a mission that you wanted to accomplish during your time as president? And if so, what were they? I mean, you just mentioned one with spreading out our our CLE programming. Anything else that you could think of?
Well, we were going through a transition also in the support staff and the supporting organization, and we went through a couple of changes in our support operation. And we got one, I think, which was more expansive, with expanding the scope of the organization and more attuned to what we were trying to do. I think that was very helpful when we did that.
Yeah, definitely agree. So from your perspective, what was your greatest accomplishment or proudest moment during your time as president?
Well, when I had to give the speech at the annual dinner, I was very pleased to have as my guest speaker Ken Starr, Judge Ken Starr, who was well known at that time, and at that time it was also a personal friend of mine. He had worked with me very closely and was very helpful in an appeal before the Supreme Court of the United States regarding the doctrine of equivalence, and also retained Judge Bob Bork to assist as well. And I had John Roberts briefly involved also.
Wow.
So I had some very helpful federal help. And I can't say how pleased I was with Ken Starr. He voluntarily, at no cost, came in to speak at the dinner, but he was such a pleasant man to work with and such an excellent judge. Working with those people was really, I think, the most interesting experience of my career. And of course, before the Supreme Court, not too many patent cases get there, so that was also interesting.
Sure. No, when that case, the petition was granted, unlike more recent years, it was there were patent petitions were granted few and far between.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things was when I went into the argument, Bob Bork was with me, Judge Bork, and he stopped me on the steps going in. He says, "Could you tell me again what's a file wrapper?" so,
Oh, that's great.
they weren't patent attorneys. They knew a lot about the Supreme Court and arguing a case, but they didn't know a lot about patent law. But they were very helpful with the court, that's for sure.
And if you recall, what kind of involvement did now Chief Justice Roberts have in assisting you?
Well, he did less. He had some sort of a conflict, but he did consult on several things at the request of Ken Starr, and he was less involved, but he was an interesting man. They all had different personalities, and they all had different ways of handling things, and we had many contested discussions among all of us on what to do. But very
Oh, that's
interesting.
great.
So you
Oh,
asked me what's a memorable part of my career. That is a memorable part.
Oh, that's amazing. That's great. So while you were president, what would you consider was your greatest challenge?
I think it was mostly this idea of the changing nature of the profession. It was on the early part, really, of this wave of electronics. I mean, when I first started, I mean, every paper in the federal court had to be carried down and filed by hand. So we're way beyond that, and there's so much that's done electronically now And that transition in the beginning was kind of a challenge for many attorneys um, who had been around a long time, because you had to uh, really figure different ways to handle litigation problems. Uh, and I think that was true for everybody in the profession. It was really into the modern technical world of communication for the legal profession.
Yeah, no question. It's interesting that you raised that because I've been practicing long enough that most of my career was on paper.
Yes.
Um, and I still today am more comfortable drafting on paper than drafting on the computer. It makes for extra work, but and also when I edit things, I'm more comfortable doing it on paper. Um, it's what you're used to, right, Charlie?
Yes. Yes. That's been a challenge for existing attorneys, because the new ones coming in, they don't know the old ways anyway, so it doesn't
Oh
matter.
no, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Discovery, really? You have to look at paper? They're just looking at e-files. So you did tell us about your proudest moment. Do you have something that might be separate from that as your fondest memory, or do they kind of converge?
Well, there were so many personal things that went on over the years, and different meetings and professional and unprofessional meetings with the people in the association. I would say overall that 99% of my involvement with the association was very, very personable, friendly, and enjoyable. I enjoyed most of what. I mean, there's always something that is irritating, but I found that the people were very uh, polite. It's a good word. Straightforward, honest, and willing to contribute and work with you. And in this world, it's hard to find that. And I'm thankful I went into this profession, because I don't know if I would have found as much camaraderie in other areas of work as I did in this. Even though I'm in a competitive field, and you have to compete in litigation with against other attorneys, and there is competition. But for me, that never was a challenge, because I always liked competition. I played 3 varsity sports in college, was
Wow.
captain of all 3 teams, and I'm in my college's athletic hall of fame. So competition never bothered me. Uh, I felt that was a challenging and enjoyable way of life.
Well, that's wonderful, Charlie, and well said. So let me ask you, you mentioned basketball. What were the other two sports?
I played soccer and baseball.
Wow, that's tremendous. That's great.
Yeah, it was that I never gave up. I loved playing sports, and actually, it was very good for me when you got to go through hard engineering courses, and you need something to take your mind off it. And playing the 3 sports, the coaches tell me now that won't happen again. Uh, because they all have off-season programs now. So if you're a baseball player, you have a fall baseball program too. If you're a soccer player, you have a spring program. So the programs overlap. So it's difficult to play three sports. But at my time, I was still able to do it. So I'm happy I did.
Absolutely. And you know, in addition to everything else, all the advantages of doing that, it teaches you the kind of discipline that I'm sure helped in your engineering pursuits, right?
Yeah, I mean, it teaches you that it teaches you that competition means both winning and losing.
Yeah,
So you have to figure out how to get through any of those things, winning and losing. You don't win all the time, and you don't lose all the time.
yeah. No, that's a great point, Charlie. Great point. So let me ask you, what advice can you give our younger or newer members of NYIPLA if they aspire to assume a leadership role or perhaps even one day become president of NYIPLA?
Well, I think they have to participate and get to know the people that are in the association and get known and work with it and go into things that interest them and help them in their practice. You can get some good learning experiences and you can get some tips from people that have been in a practice in a longer period of time as to how to best handle your own legal situations and your own work. I mean, I think it can be, I mean, it's a contribution, it's a voluntary contribution, but it also is a learning vehicle. As I said, I learned from other attorneys and various discussions and meetings we had on legal matters. So I think it was worthwhile to participate, and I think anyone that goes into it would have to spend the time on it. You've got to spend the time and get involved, and it's hard sometimes if you've got a full workload to devote some time to an organization like that, but there are benefits that come back.
Yeah, and I think, in your answer to my last question, you probably answered this question as well, but I'll ask, is there any other advice you could give them to get the most benefit from the membership of NYIPLA?
Well, I can't think of anything else. I mean, I think that the interface between the other attorneys and other people, most of whom are very fine people to work with and to be with, is certainly a valuable inclusion in your life if you want to be more knowledgeable as to what goes on in your field of work.
That's great advice, Charlie. And I will tell you that I truly appreciated working alongside you while you were on the board and when you were president. I know that while you were president, a lot was accomplished for the NYIPLA. But as we wrap up this interview, any final thoughts?
No, I'm happy to see that people like you, Rob, are still carrying forward with the organization, and it's still strong and active. And I look forward to being able to participate more. I mean, in the coming few years, but it was tough though with the COVID situation. I'm
I know.
surprised that a lot more damage wasn't done to the organization as to its longevity with the difficulties during that period. But at least we're back in full activity again with all that's going on. I missed the Waldorf Astoria though. I thought
Yeah.
that was a great venue for the annual dinner every year. But I certainly hope that another 100 years the organization can do well.
Yeah, from your lips to God's ears, Charlie, and you're absolutely right about what the impact COVID had not only on NYIPLA but across the board, every bar association. But you may be happy to learn that we from the depths of the membership decline that we had during COVID, we've more than doubled our membership back. So we're getting back, and want to one of the initiatives I have for this year is a membership drive and looking to reach 1,000 or above. So it looks like we're certainly within distance of that. So.
Well, the people I've been talking about are people like you, Rob, because you're a great contributor and you have been to the organization. It's well appreciated.
Well, thank you, Charlie.